Hey everybody, Jay Schlansky here from the Fifth Trooper Network. I just want to take a moment to thank you for checking out this show. Did you know that over at thefifthtrooper.com we have tons of other content, including blogs, other podcasts, all kinds of stuff. In addition, if you want access to exclusive content, you can join us on patreon.com/thefifthtrooper and join at any level and you'll get access to exclusive blog articles, access to our private Discord, and much more. So please check us out, and thank you so much for all your support.
Welcome to the Fifth Trooper Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Fifth Trooper Podcast. My name is Jay Schlansky, and joining me this week is a local player, Isaac Pendley. How's it going, man?
Hey, it's going great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. This is good. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
So Isaac, he gave me a good beating at one of our store championships, and so I thought it might be good to have you on. Tim couldn't be on this week because he's on vacation, but I thought we could, not only is Isaac a great Legion player, but he's also a local musician too, which is super cool. So that's awesome.
Sure. Yeah. I'm like, just a little bit about me. I'm originally from Kentucky. That's where I started playing Legion there, and I went to the University of Louisville, did a music degree there, and I came up here to New York and went to Eastman. I've graduated from there since, and I met my wife there, and we got married in Georgia over the summer, came back up here, and we're living up here now. Yeah. We like to play Legion. There's a lovely board set up in our living room right now. So she's slowly learning to play, which that's been fun. Yeah, love Legion. I love the community. The community up here is great. I work at Millennium Games, huge store in Rochester.
Oh,
There's some
nice.
stuff coming up there too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because Tim was originally from Long Island, but then he lived in Tennessee for a long time and just moved up here too. So I'm like, yeah, you guys sure you want to be up here? I don't think you understand.
Yeah. It's really cold.
Yeah. And especially like where I live and where you guys live, the snow is super intense.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, the average snow here would like shut down the entire state of Kentucky for months. There'd be no toilet paper, no eggs, nothing. Grocery stores raided. But
yeah, I remember we had family up from South Carolina, and it snowed when they were up. They were up for like around Christmas, and they're like, what do we do? And I'm like, it's a normal day today. Today's just a normal day. It's just like 6 inches. Everything's fine.
Yeah, no need to panic.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so it's funny. I've been wanting to have Isaac on for a while. We couldn't make it happen. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, because this has come back, I think, into the meta recently, which is clones, right? And right before you and I played at the art store, and you played this crazy clones list, and I was playing double bounty, and you were just dumping dice into me, and I hadn't really seen or like thought about it in that way. And then I think it was like a week or two later, I was on the Scoundrels, and Mike and Kyle and I were talking, and Mike had his list, and then he's talking about all these dice. And I was just like, so you were kind of onto it around the same time as we brought it up on Scoundrels. And so what kind of like made you head in that direction with that list?
Yeah, so I've always been a clone player. I started out, it was like my first war game. I like was in a local gaming store in Louisville and like saw the Clone Wars core set. That's about when I came onto the game, and I was like, that's awesome. So I've been running clones like forever, and like I've always loved like clone gun line with a lot of bark speeders and stuff. I run force users occasionally. It's not like how I love to play it. So I know like Yoda right now is of course, very popular. And I watched a little bit of the Notorious Scoundrels on PAX, and it seems like there's a lot of Yoda lists and different variants, or Anakin and Padme. And I've ran both of those lists. They're obviously good. It's just not like, it's not how I like to play a bunch. So yeah, it's really cagey and like, it's competitive. But I like to run I've always liked the big fire sport pools and sort of being able to overwhelmed by volume, accuracy by volume, I guess. And so that's why it's always been something that appealed to me. So
Yeah.
when Cody hit the scene, I was like, oh well, surge to crit range 4, and he also all of a sudden helps the bark speeders and stuff, and he with a coordinate to vehicles, and that's what really like the bells started firing off for me. So like when he hit, I went to Rocky Top and brought like a variant of it that was similar to what you saw, except I had an ATRT in there with like a
Hmm.
comms relay. I didn't like that. The ATRT was doing good to like give fire support out and give out orders, but it wasn't it's like useless. Like if you shoot it without fire supporting it,
Yeah.
it's like just okay, maybe suppression, maybe not. Uh Occasionally it helped a little bit with armor, fire support and an RPS into it, but not so much. So I arrived at the list that I ran with you, and it was 3 barks. I'm trying to remember it. Three
Yeah, here I got it
barks.
right here. I can
Oh
tell
yeah, yeah.
everybody. Commander Cody, with aggressive tactics and seize the initiative. You had a clone commander with improvised orders. Phase 1 with the RPS 6, Boyle and Recon Intel. Another clone phase 1 with Z6. 3 of those actually. Oh, 4. And then the fourth one had Recon Intel. That's right. The Bark with the twin laser gunner, 2 of those, and then the third one with the RPS 6. Yeah, it's so funny because the arts we're referring to a store. It's half an art store and half a game store in Syracuse when we say the art store. So the tournament before that, which was I think the month before, I had run a Yoda triple barks, but all my barks were naked. Like I didn't
Mm.
have anything on them. And so when I got to you in the tournament, I was feeling pretty good. I was doing really well. And I got to you and I like just scanned your list real quick and I was like, oh yeah. I got it. I know what this does. But I wasn't really thinking about the extra guns on the barks. I'm like, oh yeah, those got to be naked, like in my brain for whatever reason. And then I don't know if you remember, but I think you hit something with like a fire support with the Z6. I'm like, wait, what is happening? What do you have on the bark? Like I had to like go ask you like twice. I'm like, wait, what do you have on that bark? Like
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I remember. Yeah, and it
yeah.
is something that's shocking because I think so many people are used to seeing the clone Yoda, clone and Anakin
Hmm.
type variant, and to see somebody bring like a bark with a heavy fire supporter Z6 into it, that it always is. If it hasn't been done to you before, you're like, oh, what
Yeah.
do you mean I have to roll 12 saves?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's which that's what I love. I love like rolling all the dice, and like that's how I mean, it appeals to me, but it also I think it plays into the competitive side of things because like everything has heavy cover now.
Yeah.
Well, barks are good at getting flanks. They're good at getting around. You can just nose up on whatever is in cover, and then you can fire support it in. So now all of a sudden, like where that Z6 would have been firing with nothing, no surges, into cover, and like maybe getting 4 hits on an average roll. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, and that Z6 can shoot over with surges
Yep.
oh, through the no cover and usually with an aim with the bark. So it gets pretty lethal. I mean, Z6 is like a slot machine, but I mean it averages around like 12 every time. So if it gets under that, then you're really whiffing. And there's
Yeah, it was wild. I think that was such a great game because I mean, my list was really I was really surprised at how my list was holding up against it. But there was a point where, I think you erased maybe a shore trooper or something else, and I was like, oh gosh darn, like this is man, that's a lot. That really sucks. And then I think you dumped like 20 or 30 into Boba and he just was not dying. Like he's just like all saves. And I was just like, all right, my slot, that like
Mhm.
my luck came back on my defense. But yeah, that was a crazy game.
It's always funny. Every time I have ever played against a Boba, it is always like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Boba's like 80% saves and up, and I'm just like, wow, like that's great. But yeah, yeah, I do remember that because yeah, I fire supported him a couple times and
Like
went like
twice or
really
three
aggressive.
times. Yeah. Cause you were, I
Yeah.
think at that point, it was basically if I remember this correctly, if Boba lived, I was taking the game.
Hmm.
And so you had to kill him. And
Yeah.
you're just like, all right, I'm just putting everything into Boba. And the first shot came through saves, and you're like, Okay. And then the second next one you fire supported, like maybe 1 or 2 wounds, like it wasn't a lot. And then you finally got him, I think, on the third fire support shot. But it was like he was just tanking all of it.
Mhm.
And yeah, that was a wild game. So
Yeah. One thing about the list that
yeah,
which is you played well against it, I thought, because I mean, of course, Empire sort of range 4 gun lines,
yeah,
and like I spent like the entire first turn having to like move towards you, which clones don't like doing. But that's the philosophy in the list is really like if you get into range 3 of it, you will die. Like if I
yeah,
can see you at a range 3, I I don't think there's anything that can generate that much firepower, but that being said, it has a lot of flaws in that, like the big range 4 poke gun lines and stuff. A lot of Pierce, of course, you had a lot of Pierce in your list, and you
yeah,
were really like, because that was the most, well, I lost more models in the game after that, but like
yeah,
it was like the first time I had brought that list, and I was like, oh wow, like
yeah,
I'm not used to
yeah.
having this many bodies dead, and yeah, you shot a lot of my stuff off the board. So,
And really like when you're facing, in that, for instance, basically I just turtled in the corner
mhm,
and just was like, well, I'm gonna have them come to me. Like I can't go into the middle towards these objectives. So if he wants them, he's gonna have to come get them, and I'm just gonna sit here and shoot. And
yep,
so, but yeah, and I think if I remember right, you played really well to the terrain, and but you were still just kind of, you didn't have a choice but to just kind of march at me and try to
mhm,
eat it and get through it, and you did, and I mean it did come down to the line, but yeah, that was but yeah, you gotta really watch that range 3. It starts hitting and you're just like I remember, like I think like arbitrarily I knew, but I don't think I really in my head was like as scared as I probably needed to be.
mm,
You know what I mean? As you
yeah, yeah.
started coming up, by the time you got to me, I was like, "Ah, I've been doing all right so far. I could keep going," and then you just started erasing stuff. I was like, "Uh-oh."
It always feels nice. You gotta like
Yeah.
scoop the dice up in a big handful,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
throw the
Yeah,
dice
yeah.
in.
How many dice are you rolling? I remember asking that a few times. Like, wait. Do
It's
this
like, don't
for
worry
me.
about it.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
like 20 something. Don't worry
Yeah,
about
right.
it.
It's just like 9 hits over cover. I was like,
Yeah,
what?
it's okay. Pay no mind. Well,
Um,
like and Cody in there too. Like that's sort of coming up. People are starting to realize that Cody being fire supported is really good
yeah.
because that average is like 7.5 with Pierce, and he surges a crit, and like I used him to kill armor. I remember back in the day, when I was playing with like core box clones in competitive tournaments, and there was like no rocket outside of the one you threw in the bark. I was taking Rex and fire support and tanks.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
so it was like
Well,
Cody at range 4 is really good
yeah,
with
well, and
lethal.
I think what happened, if I had to get, I'm trying to remember like the order of releases, but like this happens a lot in Legion, and I think we're seeing this with Yoda right now. Is like something comes out, but then something more exciting,
Mhm.
maybe not as good, but more exciting comes out like a month later,
Yeah,
and everyone's focused on that. Like maybe it was Dark Troopers. I think it was Gideon and Dark Troopers, right?
yeah, yeah.
It was
Right after.
close. Yeah,
Hmm.
and so like something, and then you just forget. You're like, and you just move on, right? And so I really like, I know it kind of stinks because we want new stuff, but I like the lull in releases like that we're having right now. So like July to I think January, Genosians are scheduled to
Hmm.
come out, but like we've got a good like 6 month span where we're not going to have any releases, so the meta can kind of like start to settle and feel itself out. And I think that's why clones are doing well, right now.
Yeah, I agree. And it is nice. Like this is the first time I'll be going to Worlds or Adepticon or any like the only convention I've been to
Mm,
was Rocky Top. So it
yeah,
is nice that it's not just completely getting flipped on top of
yeah,
itself right before you can kind of get some good practice reps in. Uh, yeah, but
yeah,
it was
for sure. And then so that tournament, so we played in were we round 2 or 3?
round 2. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
then
no,
no, 3. I
round
think
3. It
we were
was round
3.
3. Yeah,
Yeah.
round 3.
And then you went on to round 4, which you and Paul were the only ones that played.
Yeah.
And he was playing a remnant list that was pretty nasty.
Yes, it was. I don't if you have it pulled up, but
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So
yeah.
he's playing, he had the Imperial Officer, Storm with a T-21, Shore with a T-21, Scout Troopers with a T-21, Death Troopers with the RT-97C, and an E11. Two of those. Yep, three of
Yep.
those. So three of those. He had three of
Yep.
those Death Troopers. An E-Web. I love E-Webs with an
Yeah.
overcharge generator, and Imperial Dark Troopers with frag launcher and assault cannon.
Yep. Yep.
Dude, nasty.
It was insane, and like I'm used to being the one when I pull up, I'm like, I have the most firepower.
Yeah.
And I was wrong.
Yeah.
Like, and so I had to sort of adapt my strategy in that round 4 game. I pulled up and I was like, okay, Empire gun line, I have slightly better saves. I mean, Death Troopers have the same saves as me, but I'll be okay. I got like a lot of surge tokens. I'll just line up like I normally do, just dare you to walk into range 3, and we'll just duke it out, and
Yeah.
I should come out on top. And I was like, nope, wrong. That list has so much firepower.
Yeah.
And with the Death Troopers, you can sit at range 4,
Yeah.
and that was something that being able to sit at range 4. I mean, it's different when you're walking into a range 4 chip gun line. We're like, okay, he's taking little sniper shots at me, little 2 and 3 dice pools. No, these are like full Death Trooper pools,
Yep.
backed with aims from the Independent because the Imperial Remnant, and that gets nasty. Suppressive is taking away clone actions pretty easy with those phase 1s. I mean, it really came down to the wire, and if it weren't for the way the board was set up, there was this huge building that sat in the middle of it that was like really big line of sight blocker. We were playing key positions, and middle KP is this huge building, and so I would literally like hide everybody behind the building and just like volunteer a clone squad to jump on top of it and fire support and die and hop back down.
Yeah.
Like, and that's like that's how it went, because I started out sort of I put guys out on the wings sort of in cover, and then I realized I was like, I can't do this. So I had to adjust and bring them back in behind the building.
Yeah.
And like I ended the game with, I think I had one clone squad that had guys in it, Cody, a clone commander, and like 3 or 4 just sergeants running around, just unit leaders. And that was rough. And that's the only reason I won, because I was able to stack that many guys up behind the building to where he just couldn't see it. But he definitely had more units left on the table than I did, and it was a really good game. There was a lot of crazy shots and a lot of crazy dice rolls. I had one of those lone clone sergeants that were left over the unit leader. I had him like take a pot shot and hop down because he like rolled all of his suppression off, and he killed a dark trooper.
Oh my
It's like
gosh.
headshot, just one black guy. But yeah, stuff like that. But it was a good game. That remnant list is dirty. I think it's a very good Imperial list. It's one that scares me. I mean, it's really easy to run. You got to really think turn 0 out.
Yeah.
But after that, I mean, that's what I'm teaching my wife to play, because if you can kind of get the turn 0 thing down and like learn how to deploy your units in a gunline formation, you just draw tokens and shoot stuff off the board. And it's really that easy, and it has so much range 4 presence.
Yeah.
Um,
That was a big thing, because at that same tournament, so I ran double bounty, and I had Death Troopers, and I think that was a shocker to a lot of people, like just how hard they still hit, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was just like, and I think that's another unit that I think with Remnant they get a little bit more love, but it's one of those units that I just had them in a double bounty list, and I was, between those and the shore troopers, like my range 4 was just, you're getting hit hard before you even make it to range 3, which, it was perfect against your clones, but well, not that perfect because I lost, but it was good against your clones. But yeah, Death Troopers are just so good.
Yeah, and with the remnant list, it's everything's in a bag. That's like the turn off about that list. It's you have no war control like at all. But I mean, you can pretty reliably pull Death Troopers just off the. I mean, you got 3 Death Troopers and a scout in there, so there's like 4, and of course you have like it's 2 corner support and the heavies, but
Yep.
but the stuff comes up and everything does like the same thing. I never felt, which I guess it would segue into it. I ran the list, a version of the list. Yeah, yeah. So I guess after playing against him, and I was like, this is really hits like a truck. I played another tournament, and somebody else ran it against me. It was another player in the local scene. I forget, but he had a variant that didn't have the dark troopers,
Mm.
and he had 2 E-webs and stuff, and it still hit like a truck. And I was like, okay, I gotta run this and see what it's about and see like what's going on with it. And yeah, I ran it and won another. I ran it and won a local tourney at Millennium with it,
Yep.
and it yeah, you just draw tokens and blow stuff off the board, and I ran a variant that had medics. Yeah, I swapped out like some heavies for like medic bots. My scouts didn't have a
Yeah, let me
heavy.
see. I was like, sorry, what's the talk? Because I was like trying to find. I found it. Here it is.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so you had the officer with improvised. You had death troopers with the 97C and the E11. You had 3 of those. Scout troopers naked. Stormtroopers T21. Then med droid recon. Another shore trooper with T21. The E-web with overcharge, and dark troopers with the assault cannon and frag launcher.
Yeah. So pretty much the same list that Paul ran, with the exception of like dropping a heavy
Yeah.
for a med bot. Yeah, and I ran it, and I felt bad running it because it's so good. And like a lot of people were bringing these range for gun line, like not gun line, but like range for poke
Mhm.
gun lines to like try to chisel away, be cagey about it. And this list is like, okay, you know what's better than
Yeah.
me? Like like plinking 2 at you, I'll just like shoot my whole dice pool at you and kill the unit that tried to
Yeah.
get some chip damage. And that's kind of how it was. I had a rebel matchup that was
Yeah, you played
pretty
against
rough.
my buddy Nick Gardner. Yeah, so that Echo base list, he and I had been working on that over and over, and like we've been playing,
Mhm.
like yeah, he that's a good list. That's another good list, right? And tough to play against.
Yeah, and he played well, and it was a great list. The air speeders ran up and shredded my dark troopers, but there's just enough. Uh, you reroll so much that you have aim tech or armor built in
Yeah,
through sheer amounts of rerolling of dice. Like there's not a lot of impact besides the dark troopers, and there's some critical on the with the T21s.
right.
You just reroll so many dice that I mean you're gonna roll crits, and I ended up just crit fishing and blowing up air speeders with that. Uh,
When that
it's
happens against like ATSTs and Tempest, like Tempest, right? And this is I always tell people about, it's like if they don't have impact but they have clones or something that can like a lot of aims, you're
yeah.
and critical or anything, they're gonna get at least a couple through, like, and it starts to stack like really
Mhm.
quickly.
Yeah, every 8 dice should at least get you 1. You have
Yep.
critical because 2, yeah, and it adds up quick. But that was a good game. It's just yeah, the range 4 stuff is I had my death troopers up on this platform. They were in heavy cover, and it's like anytime his rebel units poked out to shoot at anything, it was like just I mean,
Yeah.
it was just like whole squad's gone. And it's just brutal. It's brutal to be able to sit at range 4 and reliably it's like 7 you should max the dice pool out if you just sit there and just get an aim. like you get an aim
Yep.
already, so I mean it pretty much maxes the dice pool out on average. Uh which is pretty
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah, and I mean, you didn't play any slouches. You played three pretty good
Yeah.
players, Tim, Nick,
Yeah,
and then
Tim.
Alex. So yeah.
Which Tim ran a Yoda list, and that's another like he ran like the standard meta Yoda Padme. He took
Yep.
Boyle a little bit different with
Oh
and
yeah, and he
it
had
was
Chewy.
yeah,
Yep.
and Chewie. But and the damage mitigation on that was insane, which at first was like, oh, like wow, that's really good. Like it was like I'd have to shoot twice to get through all the defensive tech, but it was like I still have more.
Yeah.
Like that's what it's just so much firepower, which is it's interesting to see. Like I wonder if it got ran any at PAX or anything, or how it would fare. Because I know Empire didn't do too great.
Yeah.
It didn't make top 8, and I wonder if it starts getting ran in the meta, how it would fare uh, into all these Yoda lists. Because it seems like a pretty good matchup. Because you can't like the Yoda list sort of relies on that. I'm gonna poke at you until you come in, and then I'll
Hmm.
fight you if I have to. And you can't do that with
Yeah.
the Death Troopers.
No. I'm looking through. I don't see. And this, yeah, like problem with, and this isn't a problem. The
Yeah.
thing, I don't mean problem. Thing with Empire is there's so many ways to run Empire. Like
Right.
Empire's obviously the most loved faction of all the factions.
Mhm.
And I get it. I love Empire.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just like yeah, a lot of this is ATST. Yeah, I don't see a lot of remnant. Like that's really funny then. But here's one. This is a strange version of it. Not a lot of firepower in this. So this is the double dark trooper
Oh,
occupier with two stormtroopers and three stormtroopers and two snow troopers. Yeah, that looks like the only one I really see. All the other ones are like hero hammer stuff.
sure. What's funny about the Dark Troopers, I think they're my least favorite part about the entire list. If I could take anything else, I would.
Yeah.
It's just because I usually got blown off the board for me. I mean, I wasn't really playing great with them, I don't think, except for my last game. I did decide to change it up. I played against Alec, who's also a great player, and he had the Droid Battle Force, the new one, the experimental Droid Battle Force.
Yeah.
And he built out he had 3 commandos and then I think a couple squads of experimental Magnas, and it was really good about being a good range 4 gun line, like the kind of classic poke gun line. If you come into range 3, you get closer, even more dice with their dice will increase with closer range. But the he poked one squad up to shoot at me, and then I just marched all 3 death troopers out.
Yeah.
Just and that
Yeah.
it yeah, it really punishes that style of play, which seems to be very popular. So I think it would trade well into what the current meta seems to be. Uh,
Yeah, I think so. It's interesting. The meta is so all over the place, which is
mhm.
great, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I know clones are definitely back at the top, which is good. Um, I don't really know what in Empire, because Empire is so all over the place, but it looks like double bounty is still really
yeah,
good.
yeah.
And, yeah, it's just super interesting. But I mean, if we look at Worlds last year, our boy Luke Cook, he's in our circuit here on the throughway through New York. He didn't run an on meta list, right? And neither did
Yeah,
did his opponent, right? She had an off meta list too. So it was
yeah,
just
yeah.
like, it's so interesting. And I think this is something I've always kind of talked about is if you have a list that's halfway decent, right? Like
Mhm.
that has some power behind it. And if you've just been piloting it and you just practice and practice and practice and you know your list better than anybody knows their list, you have just as much of a chance as if you were running like a high caliber meta list.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's one of the things I love about Legion too. I mean, yeah, it's about how good you can drive a list for the most part. I mean, there are some things that you're significantly uphill battle, but it's yeah, it's really about how much practice you have and how well you know things, and
Mhm.
you're sometimes rewarded for running stuff that isn't really in the meta because people don't expect it. Like with the bark list, like that's not something you see all the time. That kind
Yeah.
of sheer amount of firepower. So sometimes it plays to your advantage to not have something that people are prepared to play against.
Yes, I've always, yeah, I agree with that because I've been trying not to play Tempest because it's my dream list, and I have a variation of it now that I like, but like, that was always the thing before when I was playing double heavy before, is that just people weren't ready for it. Like they're like, I've never played against two. Like I used to play a tank and a ATST, and so people are like, oh my God, I don't even know what to do with this. And so yeah, the element of surprise is always great in Legion and in any kind of battle, I suppose. So
For sure.
but yeah, so I was going to
Yeah.
ask you, we always talk on here that I think our interstate here that we have in mid New York, central New York, and western New York is one of the toughest areas to play Legion. And for somebody that's currently deep in it competitively, how's it been for you?
Yeah, it's really great because you definitely there's a casual scene, and I
Hmm.
love that. I love playing casual games. Like I don't love to just constantly sweat 24/7 when I play the game. But if you want to do that, it's definitely here. There are people that are more than willing to try to, I mean, optimize lists to the absolute top tier competitive
Yep.
level. And you'll see that a lot at these tournaments. Like going to these tournaments, the store invites for Worlds. Uh, those are hard tournaments. Like like it really does get pretty difficult. I mean, it's like you said, we got Luke Cook in here
Yep.
and stuff, and it's which is nice, you know, it's good, and I always encourage people to come out to those things 'cause that's really how you learn to get better at the game,
Yeah.
even if you're not a competitive player and you're just a casual player and want to learn more about the game. I think those tournaments are a great place to come out and meet new people and learn new things about the game. It's not always just about like blowing your opponent off the board and just winning, you know.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and I would say,
great.
Marcus, the guy that he went 3 and
Right.
0 at the same tournament at the Millennium Tournament.
Mhm.
Um, but he's one of the guys that's just been he's a young
Yeah.
kid and he's just been playing and playing and playing. And I can't tell
Mhm.
you how many tournaments he's been where Evan and I have both just like ran him over and been like, "Ah,
Yeah.
man, I'm so sorry. See you later," and like on to the next game. And now he's been coming up and I've played him recently and he has gotten really good at the game.
Oh, he definitely has because I played him at the art store. He was my second round,
Yeah.
and he hadn't seen that kind of bark fire support. He had stuck Anakin out, and it was literally first activation, bark, fire support, dead Anakin. Like
Ugh,
turn one, first activation. I felt
ugh,
terrible.
yeah.
Anakin whiffed. He shouldn't have been dead. I
Mm,
mean, he had like some dodges and was in cover. He shouldn't have been dead. But
right.
like the intent was like, okay, I'm gonna at least cripple him to not do anything. And he was just okay, gone, no command
Ugh,
cards. Like it was rough. But
yeah.
he came out to to Millennium and he got a Worlds invite
Yeah.
at the last tournament. I mean, he's really came a long way. Great player, great kid. Uh,
Well, yeah,
yeah.
and I guess I bringing that up to kind of line up with what you talk about is, don't if you have a local scene or if you're here in New York and you want to come out and play, like don't be scared to play the tough games because I think even though I'll speak for everybody in our scene. I think all the good players they'll recognize that maybe you're newer
Mhm.
or that you're not as adept at the game and they're not out crushing you and like rubbing your face in it. They're
Yep.
just playing the game, but
Yeah.
they're going, "Hey, maybe next time if you do this or this that might, like people
Mhm.
everybody will walk you through it and like really talk to you and for newer players if you're just starting and you're listening now like I actually just had somebody send me a note that their son went to PAX and played Dash, one of the guys from Scoundrels, and was like had a great time, even though Mike beat him. But he was just like Mike was like explaining to him how things work and like, oh no, don't do that, do this. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and I think that most of the communities like that. And so, if you hear us talk about, how rough tournaments are, it isn't for newer players. It's more for like when like next time Isaac and I play each other, it's gonna be really competitive, and that's okay because we're there. But like if you're newer, it's not the same
Right.
with you, you know.
Yeah, that's something I've always found in Legion community just as a whole. I played in Kentucky, I played up here. It's like it's always you're wanting to like take people under your wing and like teach them the game and like you want it to be an enjoyable experience for both
Yeah,
players. And it's always about sort of picking them up and like there's always just the after game post game dialogue just talking about like hey
yeah,
how can we improve, how can we do better, and it's never heated or angry. I mean I'm sure it does occasionally get that way,
yeah.
but I haven't seen it. um, it's
No,
always
I've only seen it. Definitely not in our scene.
yeah.
I've seen it but mostly at like large events like
Mhm.
like worlds, right? But
Sure.
even the heated isn't like what you would think as heated.
Yeah.
It's just more of like a judge call and just
Right.
going, no, this is what I think, this is what I think, this is what that guy thinks. Like, what's the call? Like, we
Yeah.
need to know this is important, more heated like that. Like, I don't think anybody's really like fighting or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Which yeah, after I play a lot of different war games, and
Yeah.
that is nice to see because it's not always the case. I mean, I've
Nope.
seen I played Warhammer some.
Yeah.
I still have an army,
Same.
and I've
Yeah.
seen like
Yeah.
tables flipped. It
Oh
gets
yeah.
not to hate on Warhammer, but it can get intense. And Legion's just not that way. And that's when people come in the store at Millennium. I'm always if they're looking for a first game to get in.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is a great game. The
Yeah.
community's great. The people are nice. Like you can be as competitive or not as you want to be, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
And Star Wars.
I would say like last episode I was talking about how MCP compared to
Mhm.
Legion, where MCP I feel like when something really bad happens in MCP, like I lose a character or a character gets dazed or whatever, I'm mad for like 2 seconds and I'm like, that sucks. But then I'm like, all right, I'm gonna bounce back. And and I was kind of comparing it to Legion, where sometimes in Legion when you lose a unit, it's just you're done and that's the game.
Mm.
But I will say that like that's comparing one to the other, but like comparing Legion to 40K or Fantasy or Age of Sigmar or like Infinity or any of those other, like it's a much more forgiving game.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it always feels worse. I don't know if it's because like the models are they're so expensive or what.
Yeah.
There's just something about losing a squad of Space Marines that hurts more than picking
Yeah,
up some droids. Like,
yes.
like
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I think, because not so much anymore. I think Legion's getting there from the hobby aspect, but also I think with whether it's 40K or Age of Sigmar or Old World or whatever, it's like the time you spent on like modifying and like painting and like getting it going, and that also factors into it too,
yeah.
because you're like, oh yeah, I got this new character, boom, and then you're like, oh, he's dead. Oh man,
It's
what
like,
the, yeah.
darn.
Yeah.
It's
uh
always painful. Me, anytime I put Boba Fett on, I'm like,
yeah,
oh, look, I painted him up and spent some time.
well, only
Yeah.
listen, only my Boba Fett can be that good,
uh,
apparently. It's like
no, it's any Boba Fett going against me. It just plot armor activated. That's why I'm just like that's it makes sense.
oh
It's
man, that's
thematic.
funny. But yeah, so are you so you're going to Adepticon? How you feeling
Yeah,
about going to Worlds?
I'm excited. I'm not like expecting to come out on top. I just want to get the experience and
Yeah.
try it and try to go as far as I can and enjoy the convention. My wife's going with me, so
Oh, good. She'll
that'll
have
be
a
fun.
blast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I want to try to look around and because I know there's like a lot of stuff to do there besides just play.
Yeah.
I might enter another tournament for but maybe depending on how the timelines end
Yeah.
up, I'd like to maybe do like Armada or uh, Armada, Shatterpoint, or MCP, one of those three.
Yeah.
If I'm able to do of course, the Worlds tournament at the same time. But
Yeah. Yeah. That's always my thing with like those big events is like it's all dependent on how you do, because like
yeah,
if you're doing well in the one tournament, well, that's the one you're doing because they all
mm,
kind of run at the same time. But if you get bumped out of Legion day one, then day two you go do whatever you want,
yeah.
Yeah.
That way,
Yeah.
it's not like a wasted trip. There's stuff to do.
Yeah. 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 And there's plenty to do there. There's pickup games. There's all
Mm,
it's a big convention. There's stores, people selling wares. So yeah, no, Adepticon's a great show. Yeah, no, it's gonna be exciting. I have no idea what the heck is gonna be available. Like,
I
we
don't
know,
either.
yeah. We know
I tried to look it
Genosians
up.
for sure are
Yeah,
gonna be out. The next are the Inquisitors, but I don't know. There hasn't been a release date on them. So,
yeah. I really hope they don't hit for Worlds,
dude, I
but
was
they might. I
they
mean, Gene
could.
Ocean's got bumped up.
Yeah, I mean, they got bumped to January, so I mean, they could potentially be like, yeah, Inquisitors are dropping in February. I'm just like, oh my god.
Yeah, which I mean, I think that'll if Inquisitors hit, I might end up just running Cody and
Yeah.
Gunline because that doesn't really affect me. I actually would like that, but Yoda Gunlines, I feel like really suffer with
Yeah.
Inquisitors running around.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and
Anakin
out of the
Padme
two, Genosians or Inquisitors, I think Inquisitors have the bigger chance of shaking up the meta than
for sure.
than
Yeah.
I think Genosians will do different things, and I think there'll
Mhm.
be plenty of good lists with them in them. But I think, yeah, no, the Inquisitors are really going to change things, I think, for the
Yeah.
game. But yeah, no, it'll be fun. It'll be interesting. Trying to think what else is. Yeah, I don't know. If you had to play, if Worlds was this month, what would you be bringing?
Either the Imperial Remnant list or probably my Cody gun line build.
Yeah.
I've tweaked it some too, which I guess to talk about that. I did end up taking a loss from Luke Cook. So
Oh.
somebody knocked me. And I was humbled
Yeah.
and he took. Oh my gosh, it was in Buffalo, and it was just a store championship, and I was just showing up to bolster the numbers and play
Yeah.
and get some reps in, and we ended up coming to the final table, and it was us, and he had this like Rebel Cassian triple Mando, like and haven't seen Rebel Mandos, and I don't think I've even played with against them
Yeah.
before. So I was like, okay, and then this is a prime example of sometimes getting caught off guard by something that
Hmm.
you just don't know like how it really functions. Is an advantage because I was like, okay, they like to get at range too. They have jetpack rockets, good saves. There's still 4 guys. They have blanks on those dice somewhere. I'll shoot them off the board.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, and it's bad. I got beat bad. It was a great game, but we had it was key positions, no intercepted transmissions, and kind of it's a Shatterpoint piece, the tech shed, if you're familiar with that. It was a
Yeah.
little line of sight blocker in the middle. That was our middle intercept was on top of it, and then I ended up, we had fortified positions, and I set the barricades up, and I was like, okay, let's go. I was like, I'm going to put my clones in a battle line and just dare you to come in, and you're going to have to take the objective at some point. And he was so good at staying on range of 3. Like, I never got a fire sport shot off. Maybe I got one off, and it whiffed.
Yeah.
It was just like I ran for about 2 turns. I was like, he has to eventually come up, but those Mandos are so quick. So you could go all the way back and then just come all the way forward, and that's what he did because he stayed back and really chiseled at me. And I never like to blame dice on the game. I know people will
Yeah.
sometimes
Yeah. Yeah.
upset about like dice and Legion. I mean, they're dice.
Yeah. It happens. Yeah.
Mine were under. His were a little bit up, but I'm not going to say that's like the reason that I lost. I mean, he just played really well, and
Yeah.
the best way to prevent bad dice rolls is just not give those shots to begin with. And I was really aggressive and gave those shots to him, and yeah, I suffered for it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, listen, I've been playing with him and this crew for 5 years now, and he has always done things that I didn't think of or his opponent didn't think of, where I remember early on with like snow troopers, and he would do the peek and shoot where he would move out one, shoot, move back in, and they would have like an aim from Veers or something, and I'm just like, oh right. Like once you see it, you're like, yeah, that makes
Yeah,
perfect sense, but like you didn't think of it, but
right.
Luke did, and well, that's why he's the 2-time world champion,
Yeah,
because he just like sees the game different, man.
he
He's just
does.
like, oh, dude, it's
Turn
wild.
zero. Yeah, he like plans it all out. Uh, yeah, I've only played 2 games with him, but like I've learned so much
Yeah.
every time I play him. It's always good. Oh, he had Boba in that list too. That was something that's really cool. He had a big Alpha Strike with the jetpack rockets and his 3-pip that
Mm.
adds the black, which actually didn't do much to me. I ended up saving well for that, but and again, his
Yeah.
Boba had plot armor. I guess anytime I play Boba, I that's the one I fire supported his Boba and like nothing happened. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I should expect it at this point,
Well, isn't it
but
so funny too, like how uh, your experiences and stuff in games like dictate what you think of a character? So like for the longest
mm,
time, I thought Boba was terrible. I'm on record saying I don't think Boba's as good as everyone thinks he is. And then I played him. I'm like, no, he is. But
no, he's
but
good.
I think part of that was because in all my experiences leading up to that tournament that we played, my Boba always rolled blanks. Like I just like somebody would come in and would kill him with one shot, and I'd just be like, dude, you suck. Like I just like I'm so angry right now. And then that game happened. Well, that whole week, that whole event happened, and he was just a champion for me that entire
Yeah.
weekend. And so like that happened. I was like, oh no, okay, this is more of where my past roles were so bad that it like darkened my view on
Right.
Boba. But yeah, that can happen, right? And that's the thing, like if you're playing a list or a character and you're trying to figure out if they're good or bad, one tournament, one game is not enough. Like you've got to
Yeah.
play them pretty, like I don't know, like I would say like 10 reps. That's kind of like where I'm at. Like if I could get 10 reps in with something, 10 full games, I then have a pretty good idea of what that whatever it is does.
Yeah.
And then if you want to be really good with them, 40, 50 reps, that's where you want to be.
Yeah.
And even then, people still shock you with things.
Yeah, like I thought that I had my Cody list down to just an absolute science. I knew exactly what command cards. I would straight up just lay them in a stack on the table and just draw them and flip them because I knew exactly what was going to happen. And no, that match with Luke, I was like, that doesn't work. I was like, this is that to change
Oh my
everything up.
God, that's
It's
so funny.
like, yeah, because it, yeah, because it's just it was just set up so much. Like I knew exactly what was going to happen. It was like turn 2, synchronized offensive, and I have all these units. I go first. I fire support 2 barks. Pick
Yeah.
up 2 units, please. Like,
Well, I think the problem comes to, especially players like Luke or Kyle or Mike, is they know what cards
yeah,
you're playing next to. So it's just
yeah,
like, yeah, I know what you're playing.
yeah.
I know a way around this already, and
Mhm.
yeah. It's so funny. Like and that's I have found with players like Luke or Kyle, and even Mike time to time, that if you can do something utterly shocking that they didn't see coming, that's when those high
Mm.
caliber players start to like you can see the chinks in the armor, they start to unravel a little bit is when you're like boom and they're like whoa what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like yeah, take that, man, so I think there's like an element to that, right?
Oh
In
yeah.
being a good Legion player is knowing that this next turn, like you said, I know what command card I'm going to play, but then taking a beat and going, okay, they know what command card I'm going to
Mhm.
play too. So what do I think they're playing? And maybe I do something different or crazy or out there that's going to throw
Right.
them off and put them out of position, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just
No, definitely.
it's such a good game, you know.
It really is. Yeah. There's so many layers to it. I love it. It's my favorite game. It's
Yeah.
simple for a war game. Like it's as simple as it can really get for how complex war games are.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. I know we all held out hope for a number of years that it was going to stay simple, but it's I
yeah,
think
yeah.
the complexity has to rise if you want to keep it interesting.
A few more keywords than
Yeah, yeah,
than precise one
yeah.
and armor.
Well, yeah,
Oh,
and I mean that the armor keyword's such a
yeah.
mess, right? That's just this rat's nest of because you have armor and then armor 1 and armor 2 and you're like if we had
Like
only,
how?
if they had only known and they didn't know how big it was going to get or where this was going, but you wouldn't have given ATRT's armor, like that's for sure, right? Like if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
knew, yeah,
Yeah, it's so funny to think about that.
yeah,
It's like a armor, the guy's like completely in the open.
yeah, just an open cockpit, he's
Yeah,
just
you
like
can't
riding
shoot
a
him with a
bike.
gun.
Yeah, yeah,
Effectively.
yeah.
Nope. Takes a rocket. Deal with it.
But I mean, that stuff happens, right? Like I was saying this a couple episodes ago because I'm doing game development now, and actually you're out of Millennium, so I'm working on Onslaught, Travis and Nick's game. Yeah. So
I
so
love that game.
yeah, me too. Obviously, I do too. But like I have an expansion coming out for it, and I did something for the Game Trade magazine, that Tavern Brawl, that was
Yeah.
mine. And so like
Nice.
um it's funny because as a pundit, as somebody that was like commenting on Legion and like basically talking crap about developers, like what are they thinking, why did they do it that way? Now that I'm like in the mix on a game, I'm like, oh, I know how this happened. You know what I mean? You're just like, they didn't think this was going any further than this, and then
Yeah.
it did, and they were like, oh no.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that's one thing that AMG seems to be pretty, for the most part, on top of the ball about.
yeah,
Like, oh, okay, we need to change that.
yeah,
Like they're pretty good about updating the living rule book, which is
yeah.
that's always good to see.
They
But
yeah, I think we gave them a lot of crap early on when the whole transition happened from
mhm,
FFG, but they've really taken it and they've been doing a great job, and all the
Yeah.
new units have been really, really terrific. And I love the battle forces and how that's
Yeah.
been mixing things up. So, I think they've just been doing a wonderful job lately. And I mean, MCP is such a beautiful game. I love MCP to
I love it
death.
too. It's
Yeah.
like definitely my top 3. Yeah, I love that game. I actually ended up playing a lot of MCP when I moved up here because it was like the only night in my school
Yeah.
schedule
Oh, yeah,
that
yeah.
I had free to play. So
Yeah.
I didn't get to play Legion for like a year almost. It was sad.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because like Legion, if Legion's my number one. And I know a lot
Yeah.
of people have been worried lately because I've been talking a lot about MCP and stuff. But Legion, I wouldn't be doing this podcast if Legion wasn't my number one. It'll always be my number one. But it's almost like, and I think we can all talk to this, is where when you're playing it at a high level and you're playing competitively and you're trying to get a world's invite, it does almost become kind of work, because you're like working towards that goal and you're like, I gotta get an invite and I gotta get to worlds. Where MCP, I don't talk about it. I'm not looking to be a champion of anything. I just love the game, and
Yeah.
so I'm just passionate in that way about it, that. And Lorcana, that's the other one I've been playing a lot to. The man, Lorcana's so good too.
I don't know anything about Lorcana except that when we bring it in the store, it is immediately gone.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like instantly.
It's just
Like,
basically gamer, cocaine. It's
yeah.
in and out. It's just so fast, like it's gone. But yeah. So anyways, yeah, love Legion. Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I mean,
Hmm?
thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of you guys. I watched the it was one of the this was one of the first things that I watched actually when I was trying to learn the game, and it
Yeah.
was really helpful to sort of wrap my head around like, oh, I didn't think about that, and
Oh, well,
it was
thanks,
fun.
man.
Glad to be on.
No, yeah, I'm glad to have you on, and we'll definitely have you on again. This was great. And so, yeah, thanks everybody for listening. And if you guys see Isaac out there, give him a old, how do you do? All right. All right. Thanks, Isaac. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, y'all. See ya.
Join us next week for another edition of the Fifth Trooper podcast.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.